The rain drummed against the laboratory's reinforced windows as Dr. Eleanor Chen calibrated the quantum stabilizers with trembling hands. Outside, Shanghai's glittering skyline was partially obscured by the ever-present conclave surveillance. Drones, sleek silver objects that hummed through Earth's atmosphere day and night, a constant reminder of humanity's captivity. "Time check," she whispered to the room's only other occupant. 3 minutes until the patrol gap," replied Li Wei, her former student and now most trusted assistant. His face was illuminated by the blue glow of holographic equations spiraling above the workbench. "Are you certain this will work?" Eleanor didn't answer immediately. The device before her, a twisted configuration of alien metals and human ingenuity, represented 7 years of forbidden research. According to the Conclave's technological development guidelines enforced on quarantined Earth, humans shouldn't be capable of creating such technology for another millennium. "No," she finally admitted, "but neither was my grandfather certain when he boarded Apollo 11. The stolen Conclave identification chip felt cold against her chest, hidden beneath layers of clothing. She'd taken it from an Alturian diplomatic aide during a sanctioned cultural exchange, the kind of carefully controlled interaction the Conclave permitted to maintain the illusion that humans weren't prisoners in their own solar system. "Incoming transmission from Prometheus," Wei announced, activating a heavily encrypted channel. Admiral Reyes's weathered face appeared on the small screen, the rings of Saturn faintly visible through a viewport behind him. "Doctor, we're detecting increased Conclave patrol activity near Luna. Have you been compromised?" "Negative. Just their standard reassessment sweep." Eleanor gestured toward her equations. "The final component is ready. I'll be departing during patrol shift change." "The Council is watching for exactly this kind of move," Reyes warned. "If they catch you with that technology, then humanity remains in its cage for another century," she finished. "I'm aware of the stakes, Admiral." The stakes were indeed clear to everyone involved in Operation Breakout. 70 years of quarantine had tested humanity's patience. The initial contact with the Galactic Conclave had begun promisingly. Cultural exchanges, technological gifts, medical advancements. Then came the assessments, the classifications, and finally, the quarantine decree. Humans, the Conclave determined, developed technology too rapidly. Their neural structures showed an alarming predisposition toward innovation, a trait the Conclave claimed had led to the destruction of numerous civilizations throughout galactic history. Humanity was deemed a Category 7 evolutionary, divergent, too dangerous for unrestricted interstellar travel but too valuable as a potential research subject for outright elimination. A soft alarm chimed. The patrol gap was opening. "It's time," Eleanor said, carefully securing the device in a shielded case. "If I don't make the rendezvous—" "You will," Wei interrupted, offering a rare smile. "After all, we made a promise." The promise. Every human knew those words. They'd been broadcast across Earth 50 years ago when United Earth's first president stood before the United Nations and vowed that humanity would claim its rightful place among the stars, with or without permission. Eleanor nodded, tucking the case under her arm and pulling up the hood of her chameleon cloak. As she slipped out into the rain-slick streets of Shanghai, navigating between shadows and sensor blind spots, she whispered the final line of the promise, the words that had become humanity's secret mantra. "This is not negotiation. This is inevitability." Kavaras. Skin shifted from its diplomatic azure to panic white as security alerts blared through the Grand Archives. Her unauthorized access to the restricted terminal had triggered silent alarms, exactly as her mentor had warned might happen. The classified files still glowed on the screen before her, their contents shattering everything she'd been taught about the Conclave's benevolent guidance of lesser species. Humanity exhibits unprecedented immunity to Class 3 neurological influence. Standard pacification protocols ineffective. Recommendation: permanent quarantine or termination. The implications were staggering. The guidance the Conclave had provided to developing species for 50 millennia wasn't mere diplomatic assistance, it was direct neurological manipulation. Subtle psychic influence that nudged developing civilizations toward acceptable technological and social pathways. And humans were somehow immune. Kavara downloaded the complete file to a quantum storage chip and slipped it into a pouch beneath her iridescent skin, a natural feature of myth physiology that had proven useful. During her diplomatic career, the data burned like ice against her flesh as she forced her skin tone to shift back to diplomatic placidity. Archivist Kavara, identify yourself, came the automated security demand. 4 enforcement drones descended from ceiling recesses, their scanning beams sweeping the chamber. Diplomatic Corps Cultural Exchange Division, she replied, projecting a calm she didn't feel. Researching Earth sociological patterns for the upcoming assessment review. The lead drone paused, its processors comparing her access credentials with security protocols. Unauthorized terminal access detected, restricted files accessed. Security violation code 557 Alpha. Kavara's hearts pounded in syncopated panic. Code 557 Alpha meant data theft, a capital offense under conclave law. Her gaze darted toward the emergency exit, calculating her chances of reaching the transit hub before the entire facility locked down. The drone's weapon port slid open with an ominous hum. Stand by for neural scan and memory extraction, the lead drone announced, its voice emotionless. Memory extraction. A euphemism for the process that would leave her alive but effectively mindless. Her neural patterns scrambled beyond recovery. Kavara's diplomatic training included 17 forms of negotiation, 12 methods of cultural de-escalation, and 1 forbidden technique, the myth ancestral defense. Her skin rippled as biochemical reactions triggered a blinding pulse of chromatic energy. The drone's sensors overloaded temporarily, just long enough for her to bolt toward the maintenance tunnels, the ancient escape routes used by archive staff during the Hive Rebellion 3 centuries earlier. As she ran, the weight of the stolen data heavy against her flesh, Kavara struggled to process what she'd discovered. Her entire life serving the Conclave had been built on lies. The quarantine of Earth wasn't to protect the galaxy from human aggression, it was to protect the Conclave's control from human resistance. The implications of the promise suddenly became clear. When United Earth's President Okonkwo had declared humanity would take its place among the stars, the Conclave hadn't dismissed it as primitive bravado. They had recognized an existential threat from a species that could think and act without their subtle manipulation. Security breach in Sector 7, came the facility-wide announcement. All exits sealed, memory extraction units deployed. Kavara ducked into a narrow service tunnel, her skin shifting to match the metallic gray of the walls. She had minutes, at most, before they found her. And when they did, the choice would be simple: surrender the data and face Mindwipe, or die protecting the truth. Either way, she realized with grim certainty, the Conclave's carefully maintained order was about to face its greatest challenge in 50,000 years. The humans were coming. The Prometheus shuddered as Dr. Chen engaged the experimental drive. Reality itself seemed to protest, space-time warping around the massive vessel in patterns that human mathematics had only recently begun to describe. On the bridge, Admiral Reyes gripped his command chair, knuckles white as the view screens displayed impossible geometries. Drive stability at 68%, reported the science officer, her voice strained. Space-time fracture expanding, beyond projected parameters. Chen's fingers danced across the control interface, adjusting variables and equations that even the Conclave's most advanced physicists had deemed unsolvable by human minds. Compensating for dimensional bleed. Recalibrating quantum anchors. The ship groaned like a living thing. Warning alerts flashed across every terminal. Core temperature approaching critical, announced the engineering chief. We need to abort, or we'll lose containment. Reyes looked to Chen, whose face reflected both the terror and exhilaration of scientific discovery at its most dangerous edge. Your call, Doctor. Can we make it? Eleanor Chen had spent her entire career being underestimated, by academic peers, by the Conclave observers who monitored Earth's scientific progress, by everyone except her grandfather, who had believed humans belonged among the stars. The equations that powered this moment had come to her in dreams, fragments of understanding that she'd pieced together over years of forbidden research. "Divert power from non-essential systems," she ordered. "We're going to ride the fracture." Outside the Prometheus, reality tore open. The fabric of space-time, which the Conclave had spent 50 millennia mapping and controlling through their ancient wormhole network, ripped apart as humanity's first true interstellar vessel dove into the breach of its own creation. For 9.2 minutes, the Prometheus existed in a state that defied conventional physics. It was everywhere and nowhere, a quantum probability smeared across light years. Every Conclave monitoring station within the Sol system registered the impossible energy signature, their sensors overloading as they attempted to track a phenomenon their builders had believed no lesser species could ever achieve. Aboard the Conclave Security Council chamber, Vexnar's presentation on quarantine reinforcement measures was interrupted by the cascade of emergency signals. The elegant Alturian High Counselor's crystalline form resonated with frequency patterns indicating extreme distress. "Explain this disruption," she demanded, her translator rendering her harmonic vibrations into speech. A junior officer, a Kethri, with flame-colored plumage burst through the ceremonial doors, protocol forgotten in his panic. "The human containment zone has gone dark, High Counselor. All monitoring stations report simultaneous sensor failure. System malfunction," dismissed one council member, a gelatinous Olav, whose transparent body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. "The humans cannot—" "They're gone," interrupted the Kethri officer. "The primary human vessel, designated Prometheus, has vanished from all tracking systems. It's no longer in the Sol system." Silence fell over the council chamber, broken only by the crystalline stress fractures spreading across the High Counselor's outer carapace. "Impossible," she chimed, her translator failing to mask the harmonic patterns of primal fear in her tone. "Their containment was absolute. The wormhole network is the only means of interstellar transit, and we control every junction." Vexnar studied the sensor data flooding his personal terminal, his analytical mind already adapting to this paradigm shift. "They've developed something new," he stated, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "Something outside our understanding of physics." The implications settled over the council like a shroud. The quarantine, the carefully maintained prison that had contained humanity for 70 years, was broken, and the species that every predictive model identified as the greatest potential disruptor in galactic history was now free among the stars. "Find them," ordered the High Counselor, her crystalline body vibrating with ancient dread. "Find them before they fulfill their promise." The terraforming dome hummed with activity as colonists assembled complex machinery that, according to Conclave technological progression charts, humans shouldn't comprehend for another 3 centuries. Dr. Chen observed from a ridge overlooking the primary settlement, the red soil of promise crunching beneath her boots. In just 12 days, the colony had transformed from a collection of prefabricated habitat modules to a functional outpost with rudimentary atmospheric processors already releasing oxygen into the alien atmosphere. "Impressive work," came a voice behind her. Chen turned to find Kavara approaching, the myth diplomat's skin shifting through shades of amazement. "On Nexus Prime, they teach that terraforming requires decades of preparation." "It does, if you follow Conclave-approved methods," Chen replied. "But we've found that targeted microbiological seeding combined with atmospheric catalysts can accelerate the process exponentially." Kavara's skin flushed deep indigo, the myth equivalent of a frown. "The Conclave has been suppressing such advancements, among others." Chen gestured toward the settlement's medical facility, where human doctors worked alongside the handful of alien defectors who had joined their cause. "Your people's genetic disorder, the one that requires constant Conclave medical intervention? We've already synthesized a permanent cure using technology that was available to your species 300 years ago, before the Conclave restricted your research paths." Kavara turned away, her skin rippling with emotions too complex for her translator to process. When she'd fled Nexus Prime with Vexnar, she'd expected to find human military preparations, weapons, defenses, the foundations of war. Instead, she'd discovered something far more dangerous to the Conclave. Freedom. Alarms blared across the settlement. Admiral Reyes's voice echoed through the communication network. Incoming vessel. Conclave signature. Battle stations. Chen and Kavara rushed to the command center, a reinforced bunker buried beneath the colony's central plaza. Inside, holographic. Displays showed the Righteous Observer dropping out of wormhole transit, its weapon systems immediately powering up upon detecting the human settlement. Illegal settlement detected, came the transmission. Surrender immediately for relocation to your designated containment system. The colonists watched in tense silence as Admiral Reyes opened a channel, his expression revealing nothing of the fear he must have felt, facing the first Conclave response to humanity's escape. This is Admiral James Reyes of the Earth vessel, Prometheus. We reject your designation of our settlement as illegal. By the statutes of the Galactic Conclave itself, unclaimed systems are open to settlement by any spacefaring species. Humans are not recognized as an independent spacefaring species, the Conclave commander replied, voice dripping with contempt. You are a quarantined potential threat under Conclave Security Directive 557. Reyes's smile was cold as interstellar space. I believe you'll find our status has changed. He tapped a command sequence into his console. Humanity keeps its promises. The message went out, not just to the Conclave vessel, but broadcast on frequencies that would reach dozens of nearby systems. The settlement's coordinates, specifications, and a simple invitation: join us. Kavara watched in stunned silence as the Conclave vessel's sensors detected what was coming. 5 more human ships dropped into real space around the colony, their impossible drives manipulating reality in ways that made the Conclave navigators physically ill to observe. The Righteous Observer frantically powered its engines, attempting retreat back to the wormhole entry point. They're afraid, Kavara whispered, her skin shifting to a shade humans would perceive as wonder. Not of your weapons, but of your ideas. Vexnar joined them at the console, his scaled features unreadable. Ideas that will change everything. The promise wasn't about human vengeance, it was about galactic liberation. Chen nodded, watching as the Conclave vessel fled. And this is only the beginning. On the Krell homeworld of Hiverix, Worker Unit 7289 Delta paused in his assigned labor processing biological data streams for the Conclave Information Ministry. Something was wrong with the data, or perhaps not wrong, but different. Hidden within, the standard regulatory updates from the Central Authority was an aberrant data pattern, a recursive sequence that bypassed Conclave security protocols and spoke directly to the Krell's suppressed higher cognitive functions. The data unfurled, in his mind like a flower blooming in accelerated time, schematics for a fusion reactor designed specifically for Krell physiology and materials, power generation independent of the Conclave energy grid that had kept the insectoid species dependent for millennia, the knowledge-activated neural pathways that the Conclave had deliberately stunted through selective breeding and chemical treatments over generations. Worker Unit 7289 Delta's compound eyes flickered with newfound awareness. He was not just a processor unit. He was a being. He had a name before the designation, Tikrik. And he understood now why the Conclave had relegated his species to biological processors and manual labor. Krell hive minds, when fully actualized, could outthink most central computer systems. The signature embedded in the transmission was unmistakable. Prometheus Project, humanity keeps its promises. Similar scenes played out across 27 subjugated worlds. On the Myth homeworld, quarantined medical researchers received complete genetic sequences revealing the artificial markers in their DNA. The disorder that had kept them dependent on Conclave medical intervention was a carefully engineered leash. The attached cure could be synthesized using equipment the Myth already possessed. Underground resistance groups among the Serpentine Sakathri were shocked to receive detailed histories of their species before conclave pacification, including their sophisticated artistic traditions that had been systematically erased from cultural memory. The transmission included seed algorithms for reconstructing their ancient language, which had been far more complex and nuanced than the simplified communication system imposed by conclave linguistic optimization. Aboard the Conclave Command, Ship Eternal Justice Vexenar watched the reports flood in with a mixture of horror and fascination. The ship's communication array had intercepted fragments of the transmissions, enough to understand what was happening, but powerless to stop the information flow across thousands of frequencies simultaneously. "What weapons are these humans deploying?" demanded the Alturian commander, her crystalline form vibrating with rage so intense that small fractures appeared along her outer carapace. The communications officer, a young Zeth whose gray skin had become ashen with shock, couldn't meet her gaze. "None, High Commander, they're just giving away technology. To everyone." "Impossible," she chimed, stress harmonics distorting her translator. "Information is hierarchical. Technology is distributed according to species development, path protocols. They cannot simply—" "They are," interrupted Vexnar, studying the pattern of transmissions spreading across the galactic map like a luminous web. "The humans have analyzed each species' unique physiological and technological capabilities, then designed custom solutions that can be implemented immediately, without conclave oversight or resources." The Alturian commander's crystalline body trembled as understanding dawned. "This is why we feared them. Their revenge isn't destruction, it's liberation." On the bridge of the Prometheus, now stationed at the edge of contested space, Dr. Chen monitored the transmission networks with Admiral Reyes at her side. "Uptake rates exceeding projections," she reported, her eyes reflecting the data streams flowing across her displays. 97% of targeted systems have received complete technological packages. Implementation has begun in 63% of recipient worlds. Reyes nodded, remembering the desolation of Europa Colony after the Conclave bombings, the generations of humans who had lived and died under quarantine. "Is this vengeance enough for you, Doctor?" Chen's gaze remained fixed on the screens, watching as the carefully constructed hierarchies of the Conclave began to unravel thread by thread. "This isn't vengeance, Admiral. This is evolution." Kavara entered the bridge, her skin shifting through colors of wonder and hope. "My people have received your gift. The genetic cure. It works. We are free." The uplift protocol was never about making anyone more like humans, Chen explained, a rare smile softening her features. "It's about giving every species the chance to become fully themselves." The Grand Council chamber on Nexus Prime had stood unchanged for 12,000 years. Its perfect acoustics, designed to carry even the softest harmonics of the crystalline Alturians, now amplified the sounds of chaos as millennia of order collapsed in days. "The Krell sectors have gone silent," reported a frantic Olaf diplomat, its gelatinous body pulsing with distress patterns. "All administrative functions rejected. They've disconnected from central authorization protocols. The Sakathri delegation demands immediate recognition as a sovereign power," added another counselor. "They're threatening to withdraw from all treaty obligations unless granted equal status to founding species." The hive-minded Jex ambassador, normally a unified consciousness across 300 interconnected bodies, had split into its component forms, each screeching contradictory arguments as the colony mind fractured under the stress of competing information. "Silence!" The Alturian High Counselor's demand reverberated through the chamber, her crystalline form now webbed with stress fractures that threatened structural integrity. "This disorder is precisely what the quarantine was designed to prevent. The humans must be exterminated before their chaos consumes us all." 7 representatives rose simultaneously, all from species that had received uplift technologies. The myth diplomat, her skin shimmering with newfound confidence, addressed the chamber. "For 50 millennia, the Conclave has claimed to guide lesser species toward appropriate development. We now know this was subjugation disguised as mentorship. My people vote to secede from the conclave and join the emergent Galactic Covenant. Without another word, all 7 representatives exited the chamber, their ceremonial abandonment of positions unprecedented in conclave history. Meanwhile, in orbit around Promise Colony, Dr. Chen and Kavara worked tirelessly at the broadcast center established on a converted Earth vessel. Their transmission was neither technology nor weapons, but something the conclave feared more: truth. This is how humans overcame their own periods of exploitation, Chen explained as she loaded Earth's historical records into the transmitter. Array. The French Revolution, the American Civil Rights Movement, the Global Resource Equalization Treaties. Our path wasn't perfect, we made terrible mistakes, but we learned from them. The broadcasts reached hundreds of worlds simultaneously, bypassing conclave sensors through the quantum-entangled communication network humans had established. Species across the galaxy witnessed humanity's bloody, messy path through tyranny, exploitation, and revolution. They saw humans fail, learn, and try again, an evolutionary process the conclave had systematically suppressed among client races. Civil unrest ignited across a dozen core systems. On Nexus Prime itself, previously docile service species abandoned their posts. The conclave military, facing widespread defections and sabotage from within, grew desperate. Aboard the flagship Eternal Justice, the Alturian commander made a fateful decision. Her crystalline form, now so fractured that pieces occasionally detached when she moved, still commanded respect from the loyal remnants of the fleet. If we cannot contain humanity's chaos, we will eradicate its source, she announced, her translator, struggling to render her increasingly erratic harmonics. Set course for the main human colony. Prepare the planet killer. The massive vessel's engines flared as it broke orbit around the conclave capital, accompanied by 12 destroyers still loyal to the old order. In the commander's private chamber, a small shard of her outer carapace fell to the floor and shattered, an omen unheeded as she contemplated the extinction of the species that had fulfilled their promise, and, in doing so, broken hers. On Promise Colony, Admiral Reyes received the intelligence report with grim determination. They're coming, and this time they're not coming to quarantine us. No, agreed Chen. They're coming to end us, but they don't understand. Humanity's gift to the galaxy can't be destroyed by eliminating a single world. The idea has already spread too far. The ancient precursor site loomed before them, a massive structure of unknown materials that seemed to absorb both light and sound. Admiral Reyes led the expedition alongside Kavara, their uneasy alliance strengthened by shared purpose. The facility had been buried beneath the surface of a dead world at the galaxy's edge, marked as forbidden by conclave directive for so long that most species had forgotten why. The translator is struggling with these symbols, Kavara said, her skin shifting through analytical patterns as she studied the entrance. They predate standardized galactic language by at least 30,000 years. Reyes nodded to Dr. Chen, who stepped forward with the neural interface she'd developed specifically for this mission, a device that shouldn't have been possible according to conclave-approved human development paths. The Alturians' memories suggested the precursors communicated through dimensional resonance patterns, Chen explained, adjusting the device on her temples. Their language wasn't symbolic but conceptual. Entire ideas transferred instantaneously. The interface activated, connecting Chen's unique neural architecture, the very trait that had terrified the conclave, directly to the ancient system. Her body went rigid, eyes widening as information flooded her consciousness at rates that would overwhelm most minds. Dr. Chen. Reyes moved to disconnect her, but Kavara held him back. Wait, the myth diplomat urged. I can see her neural patterns through my empathic sense. She's not in danger. She's adapting. After 73 seconds that felt like hours, Chen gasped and removed the interface. I understand now, she whispered, her voice tinged with awe and horror in equal measure. Everything the Alturian told us was true, but incomplete. The precursors had indeed created an artificial intelligence to maintain galactic stability through the wormhole network, but they hadn't intended it to be static. The original programming included evolutionary algorithms designed to let the system grow alongside the species it served. The founding conclave species, the Alturians and 6 others, were never meant to be permanent guardians, Chen explained, as the team moved deeper into the facility. They were meant to be caretakers during a transition period. But they discovered they could modify the network protocols to establish themselves as permanent authorities. The central chamber activated as they entered, ancient holographic systems projecting images that shifted too quickly for the human eye to follow. Only Chen, her mind still resonating with the precursor interface, could interpret them fully. The precursors seeded dozens of worlds with genetic material designed to eventually evolve into species with neural patterns similar to humans, she continued. We weren't an accident or a mistake. We were a failsafe. The genetic predisposition for innovation, adaptation, and resistance to external influence was deliberately engineered as a countermeasure against stagnation. Reyes studied the projections, recognizing Earth among the seeded worlds. So the prophecy about chaos bringers was a mistranslation, Kavara finished, her skin flushing with understanding. The Alturians and other founding species interpreted it through their fear. The original concept was closer to change bringers or renewal catalysts. Chen nodded, accessing deeper layers of the facility's archives through her enhanced connection. The precursors knew that any system, no matter how perfect, would eventually require disruption to prevent terminal stagnation. They didn't fear the emergence of species like humanity. They planned for it. Vexnar, who had remained silent during the exploration, finally spoke. Then the Conclave's greatest fear, that humans would bring chaos to a stable galaxy, was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of their own origins. Not just misunderstanding, Chen corrected, her eyes reflecting the ancient data streams. Deliberate misinterpretation. The founding species discovered this truth millennia ago, but chose power over purpose. They've been systematically eliminating catalyst species like humanity whenever they appear, not to protect the galaxy but to protect their control of it. Reyes turned to Kavara, whose skin had shifted to a deep violet of mourning. Your entire civilization was built on a lie. No, she replied, her translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in her harmonics. It was built on fear. Fear of becoming irrelevant. Rain fell on Nexus Prime, not the precisely controlled environmental cycles that had maintained the conclave capital for millennia, but real, unpredictable precipitation as ancient weather systems reasserted themselves. Citizens of dozens of species stood in the downpour, faces turned upward, experiencing natural phenomena that most had never known. In the reorganized council chamber, the signing ceremony of the Galactic Covenant was broadcast across thousands of worlds. Gone was the tiered seating that had physically represented the hierarchy of species. Instead, representatives from 87 worlds sat in a perfect circle, with humans, once quarantined as dangerous aberrations, among them as equals. Admiral Reyes stood at the observation window, the scars from 3 assassination attempts visible on his weathered face. 6 months of tumultuous transition had aged him, but today his eyes held something rarely seen during the long years of quarantine: hope. Did you ever imagine this outcome when you built that first drive? He asked as Dr. Chen joined him, her own face reflecting fatigue and triumph in equal measure. No, she admitted. I just wanted to break the cage. What happened after was beyond my calculations. Below them, the former Alturian High Counselor, her crystalline form now stabilized through human medical techniques that the Conclave had suppressed, approached the signing table. Her translator had been modified to express the full range of harmonic emotions that her species was capable of, but had hidden behind formal diplomatic protocols for millennia. The precursor's creation was never meant to constrain, she chimed, addressing the assembly. It was meant to connect. We, the founding species, forgot that purpose in our fear of change. Today we remember. She signed the covenant document, formally relinquishing the special authority the Alturians had claimed for 50,000 years. The chamber erupted in sounds from dozens of species: applause, harmonic resonance, pheromone releases, bioluminescent flashing, each expressing joy in their unique biological way. On a secure level beneath the surface, Vexnar and Kavara stood before the oldest intact precursor artifact ever discovered, brought from its hidden location to the capital as a symbol of transparency. The device hummed with energy older than galactic civilization itself. "I can feel them," whispered Kavara, her empathic abilities detecting the faint signatures embedded in the artifact. "The ones who escaped, they're still out there, beyond the galaxy's edge. Waiting." "Not just waiting," Vexnar corrected. "Watching, to see if we would learn what they could not teach us directly." 3 months later, the Continuance prepared for its historic journey at the edge of charted space. The massive vessel, built through the collaborative genius of 23 species, incorporated technologies that no single civilization could have developed alone. Its mission: to venture beyond the galaxy and potentially re-establish contact with the precursor descendants, not as supplicants or children, but as equals who had finally understood the lesson embedded in their genetic heritage. On the observation, Deck Admiral Reyes and Kavara watched the final preparations, their unlikely friendship a testament to how quickly change could occur when artificial barriers fell. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about the promise," Reyes said softly. "He said humans would take their place among the stars by force if necessary. Yet you conquered through liberation instead of destruction," Kavara observed, her skin shifting through colors of admiration. "We kept our promise," Reyes nodded as the drive engaged, reality bending around the Continuance in beautiful, impossible patterns. "Not to conquer the stars, but to free them," Kavara finished. Behind them, the newly formed Covenant fleet assembled in formation, each vessel bearing their species emblems alongside the new Alliance insignia. The galaxy that had reeled in fear at humanity's potential now watched in wonder as the true promise was fulfilled. Not domination, but transformation. Not the end of history, but its true beginning. As the Continuance vanished into the depth of intergalactic space, carrying representatives of a transformed civilization toward whatever awaited beyond, Kavara's skin shifted to a color no human eye could perceive, the myth expression for that rarest and most precious of emotions, the joy of becoming what you were always meant to be.